So yeah, vets, military, family, and partners, welcome. This is actually our fourth Veteran Business Insight panel at Smith. We launched this new monthly series last semester with the intent to collect and share actionable insights from veteran connected pros out in the trenches and on the deck plates of our changing economy. Things just seem to be changing so fast, and oftentimes those changes are quite opaque. If you are hunkered down in a business school and studying the way business is supposed to be operating, or the way professors think the market is progressing, and there's nothing better than getting folks that are out in the market to come in and tell us what they're seeing, so that our MBA pros and business students can prepare for that market. So last time we explored commercial mobility, convenience, and critical tech services. For this one, we decided to pull together three equally fascinating and growing industries: spirits and beverages, spices, and sports. And so for that, today we have Eric Waters, a Senior Associate Brand Manager at Gallo, and also a proud, I hope proud Smith MBA alum. We know we're proud to count him in that category. And then we have a threefer from McCormick, Jarrett Turetsky, a senior product manager, excuse me, and emerging seasonings for salty snacks. Is that right at McCormick? Awesome. This is great because I get to say, Jarrett, stay salty, and it actually means multiple things, right? Amy Griffith, who is talent acquisition manager at McCormick, and MJ Jones, who is an operation manager, and I love this, full-time number slayer at McCormick, right?
Somebody did their homework on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Very
All
nice.
right.
Very nice. And then finally, we have Scott Nestler, who's professor of sports analytics and decision sciences at the University of Florida, and also a Smith alum, although out of our PhD program while he was in the Army. So you get to hear a little bit more from each of them as we get into the insights portion of the panel. But first, before we dive into that, we always like to take a moment of silence for our brothers and sisters in uniformed service who can't be here with us tonight because they're deployed to keep America secured, prepared, partnered, and healthy. Thanks. Second, a welcome to our invited partners today. If you're here, thanks to our relationship with the Alliance of Veterans affiliated with Big Ten Business Schools, 4 Block, Career Services, Corporate Gray, Warrior Rise, eMentor. Actually, eMentor is no longer meant to forget them, but 50 Strong, Stars and Stripes, or Warrior Canine Connection, or the Mid-Atlantic Veteran Business Outreach Center. Thanks for coming. And then a thanks as always to our corporate partner for the Initiative for Veteran Lifelong Leadership, Northrop Grumman. We couldn't do really any of this without them. A little bit of context I like to give also, if this is your first time with us. Our Veteran Business Insight panels are part of the Maryland Smith Initiative for Veteran Lifelong Leadership within our mission to enhance vet present value. And if you're interested in any of the other aspects or missions or activities within the initiative, feel free to drop me a line or drop a line to ivl2@umd.edu. I'm always happy to include more partners in the initiative as we continue to build it. Next, some quick admin items are e-forum rules. Mute your microphones while you're listening. Send questions in chat or raise your hand. Our Vet Lifelong Leader Fellow and Charles will call on you or read out your message. So wait to be called on by either myself or Charles before you launch in. And then once you do start, turn off your camera if you're able to, and let us know who you are, where you are, so we can get to know each other as we as we have our forum, we have our conversation. Here's our agenda for the hour. So we're going to start off with a pop quiz, see what we know about each of these industries, and then we'll go from the pop quiz into panel insights and then open Q&A. So with that, a little pop quiz. We're gonna we're gonna give you a few minutes to touch your keyboards, hopefully get the interactive juices flowing, and see what we all know about the three industries we're going to explore today. So, let me share the results and we'll go through the questions together and we'll see how many we got right. All right, question number one. What country consumes the highest amount of wine each year per capita? Only one person got the answer right, and it is Vatican City. I mean, I think the numbers might be a little skewed because I'm sure a lot of the people drinking the wine actually don't live in Vatican City, but that's okay. Actually second place goes to Portugal. So Portugal also is high up there, but Vatican City supposedly, by the numbers, consumes 99 bottles of wine per capita each year. All right. What country consumes the highest amount of wine each year by total volume? And actually, the majority got that right. That is America at 170 million gallons. Uh, that should be gallons, not dollars. But anyway, 870 million gallons. Question three. What state is the largest source of American wine production? And it is the state from which Eric Waters is streaming to us right now, California. So 9 out of 11 got that right. How many wineries does Gallo own? Eric, did you know this? I hope you did. No. Oh man. Okay. So the answer is C, 19. And that makes it one of the largest wineries. I think they call themselves the largest winery in the world, those are spread across three states on 23,000 acres of land. Um, Question five, who is the founder of the iconic Old Bay seasoning? The answer, I'm assuming our McCormick friends got this right. Am I right? All right.
I knew my answer was wrong, but
Okay, all
I
right. Well,
couldn't remember
now
who it was.
there we go. So now we all learned something new tonight. So the answer is B, Gustav Brunn, thanks to Charles. I learned this myself today. And apparently Gustav was a German immigrant, German Jewish immigrant, came over in the 19 or yeah, before World War II and founded Old Bay as its own company that McCormick then acquired and continued to market. All right, question number six. What year was Old Bay founded? And the answer is 1939. So actually, yeah, that answer tied with C so we did pretty well on that one. Question seven. How many people does McCormick employ? And top answer for that was actually 12,000. And the truth actually outpaces that. So it's 14,000 in 29 countries around the world. Fortune 500 company. All right, moving into sports. Which country has won the most total medals at the Winter Olympics? And for everyone, look at that. Survey says Norway, and you got that right. It's Norway at 405. I'm not going to ask how many people Googled that while they were doing the survey. But it's
I
followed
did
by
between
US.
that and Sweden. It was between that and Sweden. Wild guess.
Oh, all right. All right, very good. So anyway, yeah, so the US is in second place on that front. Question nine, how much did Americans legally wager on the 2025 NFL season? Uh, Only one person got this right, which is $30 billion, according to the American Gaming Association. And then final question of the pop quiz. What is the estimated average team roster cost for NCAA basketball teams in the Big Ten? And actually, the majority of you got that right, which is 8.5 million. Which is compared to, it's right in the middle of the pack compared to Big East at 8 million, ACC at 8.2 million, and the SEC topping out the group at 9.7 million. So that's how much they're paying for the roster to go on the court. these days in the and that in the NCAA Division One. And so that is actually from this site, which is was published as part of a the law, one of the legal procedures in NIL as part of the revenue sharing um, uh, legal procedures. Okay. Did anyone learn something in that pop quiz they didn't know before? Awesome. I'm going to stop sharing that. And now we're going to get into what we all came for tonight, which is to learn from each other and from our panelists. So the way this is going to go is I'm going to ask each panelist to answer three questions from their own insights, and then a fourth question in a second round. And so those questions are um, from your vantage point, engaging, hustling, participating in our united economy. What do you see as who's growing or who's hiring, right? What's contracting around you, and where do you see the future of your type of work? Um, so with that, I'm going to stop share so we can feel that we're like we're more a part of a meeting room here. And I'll invite Eric to start. So Eric, from your vantage point, what do you see as growing? What do you see around you contracting or perhaps, stalling? And um, where do you see the future of your work or your industry?
So for Total Wine right now, it is a challenging season. Wine consumption on the whole is down about 10% year over year. And so one of the things that the organization has been looking into and already have been proactively doing is looking at other ways and other avenues in which people consume, engage, and interact with wine, particularly still wine. Red wine has been on a year-over-year decline, just not in the States, nationally overall. And so we've seen some change in consumer trends and habits, usage occasions, purchase types, price points. And we've seen a squeeze between some of the higher price premium wine, which is in the process of growing, and then some of the lower cost wine, which is also growing, but it's kind of creating a gap in the middle. Um, Out of that space, also RTDs, ready to drinks. That includes flavored malt beverages, your seltzers, spaces that Gallo is like continuing to explore. I'm pretty sure if some of you follow that space in the news, they just acquired Four Roses Bourbon, and so they're responding through diversification. Um, and energy drinks is also another space that they're growing. I would say across the industry as a whole, the contraction isn't just felt at Gallo, it's felt all across the alcohol beverage space. And so that is a space where it's really challenging to get in right now. From a hiring standpoint, from an industry standpoint, we've seen some contraction in that space. But alternatively, some of the companies that are in beverage, that are in energy drinks, some of the Coca-Colas of the world, they've been growing. And so just along the lines of CPG, which is kind of the space that I'm in, that's what I've seen from my vantage point.
Awesome. Interesting. Interesting. So, uh, and and what do you see as the future of the industry from your vantage point? Just thinking about it, like 5 years from now, where do you see?
Uh, this is not an official Gallo position. There has been a series of differing views on low to no alc. Um, and we've seen its growth since 1994. A competitor brand, Free, has been steadily growing in that space. We've seen Heineken dip into the 0% space. And whether or not it's going to be the prevailing trend, the year over year grows as a percentage of total volume and total business. And I think that it may not be the forefront of the future, but as it grows and it becomes a sizable volume, whether it be our organization or other organizations, people are going to dig into it a bit more as the size of the pie grows.
Awesome. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I know I've been seeing that pop up a little bit more. Some of those brands pop up, uh, more frequently in my shopping. Awesome. Thanks. Well, we'll be back to you with the next question, but over to McCormick, and I'll let our trio decide who wants to go first. But we're interested in actually all your perspectives. So again, from your vantage point. What do you see as growing? What do you see as contracting? And where do you see the future of either your type of work or your industry?
I'll knock it out first. So I'm in the distribution aspect of the company. I think that from a growing perspective, e-commerce and faster fulfillment is definitely coming up. We've been really honing in on that in the building. The mom pops who just want to order something, so we want to get them to it fast, and everything doesn't have to be mass produced or mass sent out, so that's great. We also have a big growth in automation, robots, your conveyor systems, your gantry systems, your warehouse system managements, and things like that. That's really coming along well as well. That's actually a big focus and a big push currently at the MLC, the Maryland Logistics Center. Right now, that's what we're pushing, the robots and the gantry, which is just a system that's going to get us to get more things out the door a lot faster. Um, so food and pantry probably going to stay long. The economy even can slow down, and we're still going to be consistent. We're still going to show. We're still going to sell because no one wants bland food. Um, so large distribution, we should be here for a while. From a contracting perspective, most of the work in the warehouse is the manual work is kind of shrinking a little bit, primarily because it's expensive. It's expensive, and it's getting a little bit harder to staff with us paying for products, us paying for distribution, us paying for everything that you would think to run such a large system. That's pretty much what's happening. So we're sending out less product, and we're making less on product than we used to because we're sending less out overall. So that's pretty much what's really hindering us. The future, though, I think the future for us is looking to be more tech driven. How can we make this process a lot faster? How can we find ways to improve what we're doing? Things that need more problem solving as opposed to let's just push a button. Long-term effects of those things. So as distribution centers gets a lot of smarter and we get more people who are really into critical thinking and things of that nature, I think that will be good long term.
Interesting. Can I ask you as a follow-up question, just for
Mhm.
context, is the majority of when you say like e-commerce and fast fulfillment, is the majority of that growth in B2B fulfillment or are you also pushing like direct to,
Both.
mail order direct to consumer?
Both. Right now, at the MLC, we have the building is about 1.8 million square feet. We have a whole section dedicated just for both of those things. And I don't know, maybe 100,000 feet. It's a lot of space up there, but literally we have people who are employed to work solely right there to ship it out every single day. And it's growing compared to where it was last year to where it is this year. We almost doubled. So I think that it's growing very fast. So we may have to expand it at some point,
Interesting. Thank
or at
you.
least talk about it. Mhm.
Yeah. So MJ obviously on the ops side and the logistics side. Jarrett, you're on the product side. So what are you seeing in terms of growth, contraction, and then where do you see the future of your type of work?
Yeah, I think MJ was spot on in terms of, seeking automation. How do you get orders out faster? How do you increase fulfillment and efficiency rates? Eric, with some of the broader economic downturns where, well, he's seeing in the wine industry, but I would say more of the evolution we're seeing in food and beverage and the CPG industry at large. And when you think about, we understand the what, which is we're seeing what is happening in sort of like broader commerce from an economic standpoint. But I think the why is an important point to bring up. We're seeing economic downturn, economic adjustment. We're seeing the cost of capital go up and stabilize at a plateau. And we're seeing the creature comforts that we've all been used to take more from our wallets, and our dollar's not going as far. And so you see this with maybe the rising cost of groceries. The average new car is 30-40% more than it was 3 years ago. So, childcare, so many things impact, as I call, proximal variables within economics and business as to what may affect your industry. It might not just be that specific product, but what is the economic displacement that is occurring with where we have a choice to spend our dollars. And I think where McCormick is really set up for success is that we have a system of checks and balances. And what I mean by that is we're, a $7 billion enterprise, which is a lot larger than I think a lot of people maybe realize McCormick is a publicly traded company. And our business is actually in two fronts. So, I'd say about 57% of our business is B2B, excuse me, B2C. So this is everything you would go and buy McCormick products at retailers. That's the Frank's hot sauce, Cholula, French's mustard, all the spices, the grill mates, everything that McCormick does. And then the other side of the house, the 44%, which is a much larger percentage than, again, most people may realize, is all of the work that McCormick is doing in restaurant, food service, and then other forms of B2B. So not food distributors in isolation, but all of the larger companies that we support innovation for. So if any of you were scratching your heads when Frank said that I'm a senior product manager on emerging seasonings business and focus on our salty snack strategy, if anyone was Googling, well, what salty snack companies does McCormick own? The answer is none. And you would have been absolutely right. We do not own any snack companies, but we support the industry in the innovations. The one that is very widely publicly known because of its relationship and voicing to Wall Street is with Pepsi. McCormick supports an immense amount of the Frito-Lay business, and that is public knowledge, no industry secret there. And as a result, we find that when there is maybe some economic shifts or economic downturns, consumers who may have been eating out a little bit less are eating in a little bit more. So the beauty of McCormick is that when consumers feel a little bit more free in their spending habits, they may eat out more. And McCormick is there to meet consumers at the table. And then when they're eating in and they're cooking more and they're saying, you know what, I'm going to make that reverse seared steak that I would have had at a steakhouse. I'm going to make that at home. And what am I going to season with? McCormick products. And then the other piece to where we've been able to hedge our bets against inflation is really in our growth and our work in private label. Private label has been an immense growth area for us, not only on our B2C side with our growth in private label that may go into different retailers like Kroger and Albertsons and Walmart and Costco, but also the work that we do in private label and supporting co-manufacturers within the industry. So any products you may buy at some of those said retailers, McCormick has a place at that table to help support that innovation. And that's one of the areas that is near and dear to my heart, not only from the branded companies that we work with in the industry, but then also the private labelers. So, I would say McCormick is taking it on the chin where we need to, and then seeing immense growth in other areas of the company. And I'd say our B2B, our flavor solutions business has been one of those growth engines in flavor for us.
Well said. Thanks for taking that.
I only get to talk about it every day.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, of course, I knew about the support to Pepsi and Frito-Lay and stuff like that, but I didn't realize that you were that you were doing the private label stuff. So that's really interesting, and obviously diversifies you to be able to ride the waves up and down, right?
Right.
Depending on where spending is going.
It's like Frank and team. It's like an investment portfolio. It's like you're never going to get rich with one asset or one specific stock. It's about diversifying your business. And I think our upper management and our leadership team at McCormick do an excellent job of that. But they empower us at the business unit level and the division level to own and lead those strategies. So when I feel that my business needs to pivot, I'm still on the hook for that $105 million target from a P&L perspective at the end of the year. So my question is, what is the roadmap to get there? And sometimes you have to adjust and pivot on the fly. And then sometimes you really have to think long term about your plan in those 3 year increments. So it really varies quite a bit, but we're seeing a lot of growth where it counts.
Interesting. Well, so now that takes us to Amy, which is I guess you're in the people business, right? So when you look at supporting or sourcing the next salty Jared, where do you what do you see as growing, contracting, and where do you see the future of that line of work?
Yeah, so MJ and Jared both, they really hit the nail on the head from the business perspective. And from a people perspective, just kind of piggybacking off of what MJ said with a lot of that automation in the warehouse and the plants. So that's kind of where we're contracting a little bit, as far as, you know, those types of roles. But then in the sales and the marketing and quality of our products, I would say that we are always looking to grow in those areas, um, and kind of improve because we're, always looking for new innovative ideas and people to kind of help push the business forward. So that is definitely one place where we are always growing, always hiring in the sales and marketing. There's plenty of quality openings, whether that's from like a food science standpoint, just quality in the plants, quality in the warehouse, anything like that are definitely growing areas within our business. Um, and then there was another question. It was future, right? And I think that's just going to keep going. Definitely just going to keep trying to push the limits as far as like how we can innovate, and push things forward as far as like sales and marketing go. Um, but definitely, or like even um, pushing forward with that automation. We still need people to be there to run the robots, fix the robots, figure out how do the robots work, because that's one thing that they're working on with the or working on at the MLC now. They sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So it's kind of a trial and error trying to get that automation to actually push forward and work for us, not against us.
Interesting. So now McCormick, here's the big question. McCormick's at 14,000 in 29 countries right now. So in 5 years, are you going to be at 15,000 or 13,000?
Ooh.
I
Ah,
don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, I'll let you guys ponder that off camera here as we but so that actually so now you got your salty snack and you got your wine and there's nothing better to do than engage in some sports, perhaps with some money in your pocket. But anyway, Scott, that brings us to you, which is the obviously sports is like just seems to be, I mean, the business of sports just seems to be, shifting, but also exploding. I mean, every year it's looking like there's record growth, right? I mean, I saw 25% growth and, year on year and some by some metrics. But anyway, so Scott, same question to you in terms of, sports. And really, I mean, that's obviously like just a massive category, to even kind of contemplate. But you're at the center of it, sort of watching it every day, and charting the numbers. What do you see as expanding? What do you see as contracting? And then where do you see the future taking us?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to answer these questions for sports in general, but with a sports analytics lens, since that's the part where I spend most of my time. Honestly, the most visible growth is in women's sports. We're seeing record attendance, new teams, new leagues, shifts in sponsorship. The amount of Fortune 500 investment in women's properties has multiplied in the past few years, which is, creating demand, not just for athletes and coaches, but also for people who can use data to value those audiences and prove the ROI to the partners. There's one thing that's growing. Another big growth area would be, well, you mentioned it earlier, sports betting and fan engagement. The global sports betting market is, I think, projected to nearly triple over the next decade, with North America among one of the fastest growing regions. And, under the hood, that whole sector runs on data. It's odds models, risk systems, fraud detection, customer analytics, you name it. One thing that's not talked about as much, but is still huge, is youth and grassroots sports. I mean, that's a tens of billions of dollars market that's growing at like 10% a year, driven by the leagues, tournaments, the facilities, and even software platforms that run the scheduling, the payments, the recruiting. It's actually become very attractive to private equity because it's a sticky, recurring revenue business. So, across all of those areas, data and analytics are kind of a connective tissue. If you think about it, every major organization from the leagues to the tech companies in the space, they now have some level of analytics function where they use data to, hopefully make smarter decisions, decisions about players, fans, pricing, operations, you name it. So now in terms of what's contracting, it's kind of the old infrastructure that sports businesses used to sit on, the regional sports networks, the traditional cable TV models. I mean, cord cutting has crushed a lot of those local TV deals. Many of the regional sports networks are in or close to bankruptcy. There are actually NBA and NHL teams that could literally lose their TV partner, their local TV partner mid-season this year. Obviously, that forces teams and leagues to rethink how they reach fans and how do they replace that media revenue that just isn't there anymore. Let me think. Other things. I guess to stick with the data and analytics thing, one thing that's shrinking is the room for purely intuition-driven decisions. I'm not saying intuition isn't still important. You do need, experience and feel, but I would suggest that organizations that ignore data, whether that be in player recruitment or game strategy or the business operations, are, going to increasingly be exposed and overpay for the wrong assets or miss what their fans are doing. And this kind of carries over into esports even. There was a lot of early hype about esports and, easy venture capital money, but that's largely cooled and now they're focusing on more sustainable models. Organizations that can, build a solid operation, diversify their revenue and get real audience data. Those are the ones that are surviving and others are downsizing and exiting. And if I can put a veteran spin on this, the message that I would share is that the opportunity is shifting away from how things used to be, and we've always done it this way, towards organizations that are comfortable with change, the use of data and evidence and new operating models, and be part of that. So I think there was one more question here, which is like, where's the future headed, right? Where do we see things going? I see it as a tech-enabled, a data-enabled business, not just an entertainment business. And this on the media side, which I don't get too involved in, but there's pretty clearly a big shift to direct-to-consumer models where teams and leagues are taking more control of their own production and using streaming instead of relying entirely on middlemen or middle operations. That all requires people who can run complex operations, manage partnerships, use data to figure out who's watching and at what price point. And in the area that I work more closely, the performance side, we've gone from box score stats to full player tracking and bio tracking data. Every movement, every acceleration a player makes is now feeding analytics and AI models to support tactical decisions, recruitment, player care, injury prevention. And we're not replacing coaches or scouts, but we're giving them better tools to work with. So I think in the big picture on the business side, the future is sort of looking at hybrid data literate roles. I mean, everybody does not need to be a data scientist, but if you work in marketing or operations, strategy, whatever, you're going to be expected to understand dashboards and ask good questions of data and use it to make decisions. And I guess the thing that excites me about that is I think that maps well to veteran skill sets. We're used to integrating intelligence, logistics, human factors to run missions under constraints. And day-to-day good sports analytics work feels a lot like that. We've got imperfect information, time pressures, and a need to turn data into clear and actionable options. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I hadn't heard that that sort of connection, that thread, um, you know, made between, veteran skill sets and sports, the evolution of the sports industry. So that's really fascinating. So second round of questions from me, and I want to go through this quickly because I want to get to the questions from the audience and the discussion. But um, the last question is, what about your work or your industry do you think would surprise us? So we'll start with we'll go back to Eric. It could be what surprised you when you got into it, or what do you think would surprise us?
I would say what surprised me, I thought for my internship, I'd have one to two, maybe three brands to manage as a brand manager. I have 12. So that is very interesting. My team actually has 46 different brands across the business unit out of 140 plus for the organization, and it's four of us. And so our team is very unique, and we do some pretty interesting work. But the thing that I would say surprised me beyond that is in brand management, you're responsible for the product, for the P&L, and you're responsible just kind of like how Jared is for meeting those metrics at the end of the year. And yet, you don't have any direct reports. And so you have your creative teams and you work with them cross-functionally. You have your operations teams and they produce through Scrum lines. You have your sales teams and everyone sits in a different bucket. And for me, brand management ties all of that together in interest of driving the goals for the brand. And that is both very challenging and very interesting and unexpected.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I saw that what Gallo has 130 brands. Does that sound right? Like under
Yeah, I'm
management?
pretty sure we have a couple more.
Yeah, crazy, crazy. Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, over to Jared. What do you think would surprise us? You already mentioned a couple things, so
Yeah, it's a great question. I think part of it is the daily data-driven decision making. There's this idea that, um, especially in marketing, that there's this rumor, even in some, elements of like the maybe your your fellow classmates, where that marketing is like the soft science. And I would say marketing is extraordinarily analytical in both people and in the data. It's very influence based, but it is rooted in the data. So I think what Scott was saying is spot on when it comes to just like interpreting a dashboard and understanding the right questions to ask and how you're going to pivot. Intuition's important, but intuition's important when the foundation is the data to help guide that decision making process. I think there's this idea, this false notion that when things launch, for example, in the food and beverage industry, it was just kind of like, oh, how did that come about? It like, oh, it was so obvious. And what you don't see are the brand teams and all of those cross-functional partners, to Eric's point, that are instrumental in making that happen. So nothing happens by accident. Everything is very deliberate, and our hope is to get as close to batting 1,000 as we can when it comes to success. And then if we don't get something right, how do we then have that, AAR, so to speak, that after action review, and say, well, what could have gone better, and how do we make that appropriate when it comes to working with a client partner or a new product launch? But it's very much rooted in data. So I would advise that for any of the folks in the room who are going into marketing, classical marketing, post MBA type of role, to think about that. That's a good thing. That should empower you. All the things that you're learning in class really do come about value with a lot of value.
great. Thank you. MJ?
I always got to remember to take myself off mute.
Yeah, no.
Um, I think that people really don't realize that like one small delay in a distribution center can literally impact regions in one setting. I'll give you guys a great example. Was it 2 weeks ago at this point? We had a really bad winter storm. In Maryland, excuse me. If you're on the East Coast, it was really bad on the East Coast, and with that, it delayed us. we are still trying to recover from 2 weeks ago just because we weren't able to get trucks out. Trucks couldn't get here, we couldn't send them. People couldn't get to work. So stuff like that impacts regions. And you wouldn't think that because you go to the store, you saw your salt and pepper, you saw it was there. So that's a big, big deal. Um, it's also important to note that people often slip on just because people are in warehouses and they're doing typically the same thing. Communication is critical. It is critical, and we still have to work as a team, even if we're doing the same mundane things on a regular basis. And I think that the last thing probably I say is sometimes people don't realize how modernized warehouses are these days. It's not like your old school steel mill where you're in there sweating and pounding on things. You don't have to do that anymore. Everything is pretty, from a McCormick perspective, they have, they're treated pretty well. And I say that because we have things that wrap pallets for you. If the pallet is broke, we have things that flips the pallet onto a new pallet. Machines that take you where you need to go. So, we're definitely more innovative than they give us credit for. I'll tell you that.
Interesting. Amy?
Okay, so mine's not gonna be as complex as their answers.
Yeah.
The things that surprised me the most about McCormick, especially when I first started, was just the full scale of the industry and the company in general. Like you think of McCormick and you know it's a global company, but I guess it didn't really occur to me like how many countries we source from. How many brands does McCormick actually own? And it's not even just like the brands that you see on your shelves well, those are the ones that we own. But like, even if you don't buy the McCormick brands on the shelves, you probably have McCormick products somewhere in your refrigerator, in your pantry, because just the grand scope of our customers, like Boar's Head deli meat, we do the seasoning that's on the deli meat, like Frito or Pepsi, the Doritos, Flamin' Hot, all of that stuff is flavored by McCormick. And it's just so fun when I get to learn, like, oh, we do that? Happens to me all the time still. And then just like the grand scope of like how many countries we're actually in. We're in 29 different countries. We source from, I think, 91 countries because there's not really any spices that are grown in the US. So we have to import everything, which is another way that, all of that raw material comes in through MJ's site, the MLC. So we have to bring it in there, kind of make sure nothing bad is in there because it is coming from different countries. And then they get all that raw material out to the plants too. So just the way that it all moves together and flows together is really fascinating. And I don't think you really realize that unless you're in the business or in the industry.
Yeah, well, geez, I just learned about Boar's Head. I didn't know that, so that's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, it's fun.
Scott, we'll finish with you and then we'll open it up to questions here from the
Yeah, I'd say a
viewers.
few things tend to surprise people when they look inside modern sports. First off, how operational and analytical it is behind the scenes. I mean, the biggest revenue engine in sports is tourism and events, the travel, the logistics, experiences around the game, not just, tickets to it. These are complex operations. They take planning, data, coordination. I already mentioned one of the other ones, which is the fact that youth and grassroots sports are a serious investment category now. There's actually M&A and private equity money flowing into youth platforms, facilities, software, and it's a growth sector, not just Saturday morning recreation like when I was a kid. Um, I've already mentioned analytics is pretty much baked into every decision, even if you don't see it on TV. Whatever that is, the fourth down decision, the roster construction, the dynamic ticket pricing, there's some kind of model behind it. Let me tell you, my job is much less watch games all day and much more build and interpret decision support systems and tools for coaches and executives. And then I guess finally, one thing I would say is I just don't want this might surprise folks, but the industry is actually chasing veteran and other high performance talent. There are specific programs and mentorship pipelines out there designed to bring veterans into sports because leadership, teamwork, comfort with pressure, these are the things that this space needs, just like many others.
Interesting. Well, I would love to hear sometime, not in this setting, but also if there's stuff that the military may be learning from the sports industry, because it sounds like they're doing a lot of decision science that the military is trying to figure out as well. But anyway, we'll leave that for another session, maybe.
Wait a minute, as a
Um,
as a veteran myself, can I join in our conversation, please? I would love to.
yeah, please. Awesome. So with that, actually, let's open it up to participants and find out what you're interested in or what if anything that was discussed spiked your curiosity and you have a specific any questions from the field. I've got plenty of questions, but if I got questions, you guys have to have questions yourselves. I know. Okay, Alex, thank you for saving me.
No problem. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm a second year MBA and dual supply chain master student. So my question is for the McCormick crew. So because I'm in supply chain, I'm actually really curious on how the maybe tariffs have impacted the raw materials and the purchasing and distribution of those. Is there anything that you can share regarding impacts or maybe anything that dealt with the spices and specifically?
I'm so sorry. Do me a favor. My internet glitched just a little bit. Ask the question one more time. I'm sorry.
Well, can everyone else hear me? Or
No, it was me. I know it was me.
oh, okay. Is there any information you can share about the impact on tariffs and
Mm-mm.
the spices or the materials that are used and how that could be, I don't know, augmenting or delaying some of production or logistics with y'all's trade?
So I'm gonna give you a two-part and an example. I like to give examples. When I was getting my MBA, one of the projects that we focused heavy on was consumerism and something else. And when we were in the process of learning that, I remember I was at work maybe 6 months ago, and we were sitting down talking about how prices have to go up, not a whole lot, but prices have to go up so that we can basically get the supply and demand, but still make a profit. If you notice when you go to the store, you'll see that we'll use what's this stuff called, the vanilla extract. You go to the store and you see vanilla extract. Vanilla extract is about this big, and
Yep.
it's probably like
And it's
6 7
expensive.
bucks.
Yeah.
Super expensive. It's like that because that doesn't extracts are imported. A lot of the ingredients that go into extracts are imported. We have to pay for that. So let's talk about how it gets here. First of all, it's made in whatever country that the extract is being made in. Then it's shipped over in a container. So far we paid to ship it and we paid for the container. Then the container gets here and we have to pay taxes on it. And then after we pay the taxes on the container, then we have to pay someone to unload the container. Then after we pay someone to unload the container, then we have to pay somebody to drop it off. Then you pay people to put it back together, place it, repeat, repeat, repeat. So tariffs, where that come into play, where we're paying taxes, which we were already paying a hefty penny, now we are paying even more because we now have to pay taxes and tariffs at the same time, which means we have to raise the cost. So if you look slowly, it's slowly and gradually. Like I'll give you an example. If you go to Walmart, you realize you see everybody has seen Great Value brand. McCormick owns that. So one way or another, you're still buying from McCormick. You just don't really realize you're buying from McCormick. It's kind of what Amy said. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes, it impacts us.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. No,
Okay.
that's awesome.
Man, you guys have spiced everything. It's amazing. All right. I know we got to have somebody's interested in asking something about wine or sports.
No, they want to know about the salt and pepper, sir.
I know, I know. I'm gonna call out somebody here. Lydia?
Actually, Frank, I have a question.
Okay, Charles, go for it.
Definitely. So, I guess how do you see like the rise of like the independent spice makers, like the people who like I guess influencers who say, hey, like try like Danos or their own like certain spice blend. Like how do you see those, I guess like either as competitors or as threats, or do you see them as like an opportunity
Competitors.
to go alongside?
Well, I'll pass it to Jared now, but I'll say this before I pass it to him. I kid you not, McCormick is such an established brand. Family is family. The people who work there, we come to work, we have a good time, we enjoy what we do. Anyone who wants to become a competitor of that, that's okay. The goal is at some point, McCormick is probably going to buy that company. So let's just be optimistic, and we're going to wish them well for however long well they do well, and if they do bad, McCormick is probably going to buy them. So one way or another, we're all going to work together. And the reality of it is, when we're making spices and they're putting together whatever ingredients go into there, we probably provide that too. So one way or another, we're not really losing.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Charles, and I think MJ, that was a good segue. You know, in the marketing world, we can get very competitive with our space and our carved out niche and making sure that our elbows are up and we're ready to kind of like fight against some of those economic factors. But ultimately, the thing that's beautiful about the United States is that it's the world's, most powerful capitalistic society. It supports innovation and entrepreneurship. I would say if you think about it like from a car analogy, you don't have Mercedes-Benz punching the air and getting frustrated that Hyundai exists because Mercedes-Benz is in its luxury niche and it knows that Hyundai is in its niche and that there's more consumers than there are opportunities for transactions. So what I like to think about it is, am I upset that Danos exists or Kinder's exists or all these different companies? I would say no. And I would say we just have to ask ourselves, what can we do to be better? Not necessarily better than them, but better than ourselves and better than we were yesterday. In the McCormick lobby, if you go to our global headquarters, there's a mantle that they actually took from a previous building with a quote from CP McCormick, who's was the founder of McCormick, and it says, "If you make the best, somebody will buy it." And that's kind of the way we approach it. We don't get upset when we see competitors in this space. We just try to do better than what we did yesterday. And I think that's an important distinction for any marketer, but really any business professional. You're competing against yourselves, and if you bring your best self to work every day and your team's efforts, that's what's ultimately going to be the decision maker. But it is definitely something we keep an eye on. There's a lot going on in this space, and for every Breyers or Haagen-Dazs that exists, there's a new ice cream company that pops up, and everyone just tries to find their seat at the table.
And I really wanted to tag on to that because I know one thing that I really enjoy about McCormick. I got to sit in on a presentation that they did for our interns one day, and it was about the adulteration in spices. So while there are a lot of competitors out there and there are a lot of brands that may be cheaper than McCormick, the one thing that McCormick does pride themselves on is the quality of the product that they put out there. Just like Jared said, if you are the best, they'll buy it. Um, because with all of that product having to come in from overseas and the cost of it and how expensive it is and just grinding it all down, like if you think about cinnamon, cinnamon is bark. It comes from a cinnamon tree, but when you grind it down and it has such a strong flavor to it, you don't know what is always going into that. But when you're purchasing from McCormick, you're getting 100% cinnamon versus like a lesser brand, they may have, mixed in some twigs or something in there too. So that is, I think, one way to kind of set us apart from other competitors as well. You're going to get the best and good quality.
Well, I
Thank
have
you.
to thank you, Amy, because this entire hour was worth it just to learn the phrase adulteration in spices. So that's awesome. Well, I do have one last question. I want to flow over to Scott, which is I do know that we have a couple folks in the NBA. Not all of them could be here tonight, but that are very interested in the sports industry and are looking to kind of find some of those programs that you mentioned, or some of the places that they can find a foothold into that career. They are vets, and so you have recommendations on where they should be looking on what they can, some of the resources that they can perhaps access.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. I mean, one option is just, if you're curious about this path, one thing you can do is just do something small. Help a team, a club, a rec program with, solving a simple problem with data, whatever it might be, attendance, practice planning, performance tracking, whatever, or even just use a small public data set, see if you like it, get some feedback from somebody already in the industry and go from there. But then I guess the other thing I'd say is there are not so much in the analytics space, but in sports more generally, there are some programs out there. Soldiers to Sidelines, for example, they're one that trains veterans and family members to be coaches. They have free certification courses that can help get you connected into youth, high school, college, even professional environments. I mean, don't get me wrong, you don't get a fast track to the top. You still got to work your way up like everybody else. But there's another one. It's the what is it? SFIA, the one of the industry organizations. They have a Vets Excel program. They've got this multi-month long cohort where they pair you with an industry mentor, get some career coaching, exposure to, sports and fitness. It's the Sport and Fitness Industry Association is who it is. There's an option. And then I know there's one called Vet Sports University that does some things by combining education, internships, networking to help get veterans into sport management, events, operations, maybe even some analytics roles. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. You just got to go looking for them. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Scott. Well, with that, that actually takes us a little bit over time. Thanks for everyone hanging in there. But I do want to just give a quick share of the screen here so that you can see where this will be posted once it's posted. So it'll be on our Initiative for Veteran Lifelong Leadership page. If you just do go.umd.edu/IVL2, you can find it. You can also find it on in the signature block of any emails that I send. And with that, I will close things out with a huge thanks, a virtual round of applause to all of our panelists. You're welcome back anytime. You're welcome to campus anytime. I'm happy to buy you lunch or a cup of Fearlessly Veteran ice cream if we have it churned for you. And I'd also ask you to just drop me an email with your address, and I'll send a modest thank you note or a modest thank you, excuse me, and in the mail for some of your time. And you can always consider yourself a virtual or many of you are Smith vets, but for those of you who have not come through Smith or are affiliated with Smith but are veteran supporters, you can from this point on consider yourself an honorary Smith vet. You're always welcome in Van Munching Hall. So with
Anytime you
that,
want to come to the MLC and take a tour, let me know.
oh, we'd love to. Thank you for the
Looking forward to
invitation.
MLC. We would love to have you guys.
Oh, that's awesome. I want to see this thing. I also want to see that quote that you mentioned, Jared. So,
I said, no, it's headquarters. You're going to go to headquarters for that.
oh, okay. Well, both. So
I
thanks. We just got two
think we
field
can
trips
arrange
out of
that.
you.
Yeah, that'll be my turf. MJ's the expert at the MLC. I haven't seen it personally, but
Oh, come to
it is a
the
site.
MLC.
I know.
Yeah.
Not enough time to get over there, but I've heard it's extraordinary.
So
It's
where is the MLC? Just for
MLC's at Sparrows Point,
Oh, okay.
right
Interesting.
across from Niagara and next door to Amazon and Under Armour.
It is
Ah,
massive.
It's huge.
It's like
awesome.
what the biggest warehouse on the East Coast or something, right? Right, MJ?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's so
the third largest.
All right. Smith Vet's field trip to Sparrows Point.
Come on, come see us.
I made myself a note there. Okay. Awesome. Well, I'll let you all get on with your Tuesday night, but thank you all so much for coming and keep an eye out for the video and share it. Once we post it, share it with anyone who wasn't able to make it here tonight.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Frank.
you guys.